Bind, Torture, Kill. BTK, featuring Dennis Rader. Full name, Dennis Lynn Rader. Crimes and sprees. Dennis was involved in murders, at least charged for 10 first degrees of murder. Other than murder, he was convicted of stalking, aggressive burglary, communication tampering, assault, and life-involving threats. Victim-wise, he would murder many families. Before the murders, for months, he would stalk the victims, learn how their house and life works. Then, after he feels ready, he would cut their communication wires in order to make them vulnerable. Then he would take their lives as he broke into their homes. He would brutally torture, strangle them, sometimes would even jump on their bodies when they're alive. Before the torture, he would wrap their eyes with a cloth to blind them to create and add a sense of isolation. He did not end with murdering them. He would please his sexual fantasies by raping their deceased corpse. In addition, he would steal their belongings, especially high-valued jewelry, as his trophy. He would journal who he would kill for those he couldn't, since there were victims he did not get to kill, specifically female gender. He would write them down in details. As mentioned before, he was involved in creating threats. He would specifically write letters that taunted the public, similar to the case of the DC sniper, John Allen Muhammad. Anyways, he wasn't caught for decades until the early 21st century. The crime spree was noted to at least last from 1974 to his last known murder that occurred on 1991. The spree had times when it was the most active and the least active times, similar, once again, to the case of Gary Ridgway. Dennis would name himself the BTK, which stands for Bind, Torture, and Kill. Investigation. The investigation into the BTK killer was the longest and most frustrating and ultimately bizarre cat and mouse games in American law enforcement history, lasting from 1974 until 2005. It was a highly long-lasting investigation that had many pauses and failures, especially for the standard police investigation. From the 1970s to 1980s, the Investigation Police Task Force named themselves the Ghostbusters, as the killer was really, in a way, a ghost in their eyes that they were required to hunt for the sakes of the residents. The FBI was even involved in the case for BTK. Dennis would purposely create grammar mistakes and unstructured paragraphs to seem he was not educated when writing the letters and taunting the public, even the police. However, in reality, he had a master's degree in criminal justice. This failure for the case of Dennis had lasted for years until 2004. Dennis would, with an arrogant demeanor, would mail with a letter to the news station and taunt them. However, that would create the chance for the police to arrest him, as hundreds of authorities made a sweep in Wichita, Kansas. A tape was then found, specifically that showed Dennis driving in a Home Depot place, around the late 1990s. With the help of forensic investigators, they were able to pull the name of Dennis and Christ Lutheran Church, leading to them discovering Dennis was listed as a congregation president. That led to the arrest of Dennis, as they figured out the home he lived in addition securing a legal warrant. Trial and court proceedings. There was no actual jury trial for Dennis. He would instead attend court with a judge, not a jury. At first, he would say in a in the court he was not guilty. However, on June of 2005, he began to change from denying the crimes to, in fact, pleading guilty to all charges. Dennis spoke in a dispassionate and detached speech about his crimes, often referring his projects to his victims. He would even correct the judge, Judge Waller, for his incorrect data and dates for his murders, since he actually made a calendar on his murders. Anyways, there was an admission from Dennis himself he did not have any remorse for his crimes. In addition, he would confess and give on a whole detailed confession on the blind, torture, kill methods he used during his murders. That was said in the trial as well. Under the law of the state of Kansas, the death penalty was unavailable and impossible to go with, leading to Dennis on August 18, 2005, the judge sentencing Dennis to 10 consecutive life sentences. Childhood. The childhood of Dennis was not as bad as the other serial killers or notorious figures mentioned in the previous episodes. He would have a decent academic level along with proper hobbies. While his parents did provide the basic needs, the relationship between Dennis and his family was emotionally detaching. They would ignore Dennis reportedly and his brothers. There was an early sign of psychopathy, such as animal torture, sexual fantasies, and bondage games. There were many occasions where he would blind himself as he wrapped fabric around his eyes, then hang himself in a nearby tree. His parents had witnessed these actions, but reportedly dismissed and ignored behavior. Personal life, potentially affecting their crimes and acts. Dennis had a seemingly stable personal life, though it was mixed with a double life. On 1971, Dennis would marry a female named Paula Dietz. The marriage was seemingly successful, even lasting for several decades until his arrest. They would have 2 children together, specifically a son and a daughter, who went by Brian Rader and Carrie Rader. Dennis was highly engaged with his children, actively engaging with the activities with them. He would serve as a president council in a church near his home. He would seemingly had a normal life, personal life-wise. His family reportedly had no idea or clue that Dennis was the mastermind behind the killings in Wichita, Kansas. His seemingly normal facade overall had a strong barrier between his crimes and the normal, unsuspecting life, which led to the police having difficulties in catching Dennis, the serial killer, for a few decades. Pivotal events. Dennis Lynn Rader was born on the 9th of March, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas. During the 1950s, in the childhood of Dennis, he would contribute in animal abuse. From 1966 to 1970, Dennis would serve as an Air Force sergeant. On May 22, 1971, Dennis marries his wife, Paula Dietz, as he began to live in Park City, Kansas. On January 15, 1974, the murder of the case of B.T.K. had began. On October of 1974, Dennis began to dub himself as the Bind.Torture.Kill persona. On March 2004, Dennis mails and breaks the 13-year silence to the media. On January 2005, he would send a disc that led to his arrest. On February 25, 2005, Dennis was arrested while driving to his home. On August 10, 2005, Dennis was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms. Quotes from Dennis Lynn Rader. The last part and most dangerous is how we can blend into society with no apparent and outstanding characteristics. That is what makes a serial killer so dangerous and hard to detect. Life before the arrest was a good time, and the dark side took me away. They all caught, except the Reaper. Could I become a killer and not get caught? I have never strangled anyone before, so I really didn't know how much pressure you had to put on a person or how long it would take. I realized that, I didn't have a mask on or anything. They already could ID me. I made a decision to go ahead and put him down, I guess, or strangle them. It was a fantasy. Things got out of hand. How many people do I have to kill before I get my name into the paper or some national attention? When this monster enters my brain, I will never know. It's a wheel fortune, stick around, and it stop on you. Can you trace a floppy disk if I send it to you? It's okay to be honest. And then went ahead and tied it up, and then put a bat over her head and strangled her. Forensic inferences. The murder of Dennis Rader, unlike other serial killers or certain individuals, his murder was not shaped or formed from his childhood. If his childhood had a part, it was likely the ignored or the absence of his parents. Whilst his parents were seemingly caring, or, well, at least provided basic needs, and Dennis did not carry any hate towards them, they were highly busy parents, leaving Dennis to explore his fantasies, and in this case, it was not the best way. He got to use this time as a lone child and see what he can do. Likely during the strangles and animal abuse, he felt a sense of power aroused in him. In addition, a wonder of what would happen if he'd done the same thing towards humans instead of animals. He likely did not have a sense of remorse. The life of torture towards animals fueled him silently, without anyone noticing or caring. In a way, it's like leaving a cockroach, for example, in a room full of food where they can have a perfect chance to make a family. Similar to that, while Dennis had a stable condition, he had many opportunities and ignored occasions from his parents, it may not necessarily be considered a form of neglect as his parents had taken care of him. It was more of his mistakes, though it's likely his parents watched him. If his parents had watched and prevented the fantasies from spreading, the scenarios may have been different. Not difficult. Dennis Rader's mind, in a way, is emotionless, a heartless demeanor, a facade despite the seemingly gentle attitude towards others. Overall, the life of Dennis Rader was seemingly ignored, and a life of spreading and committing to his dark fantasies. Legacy and impact. The case of Dennis Lynn Rader led to the birth of digital metadata forensics. Modern forensic DNA tests began to advance, learning from his case. The theme of mask of sanity within serial killer topics had spread. The persona of serial killers began to change, learning from other cases, including Dennis Rader's. The daughter of Dennis Rader created a book about him, her father being a serial killer and a psychopath. Dennis Rader became another icon for serial killers. Family members of both his victims and Dennis Rader are still traumatized, left with a deep weight within them.